Hello Fleet, and welcome to episode 16 of Captain's Academy with your instructor Chase. And today's episode is going to talk about citadels, because things like this happen in game. And for most people, when that happens to them, there's the usual sense of surprise and shock, and they wonder how it is done. So hopefully after this episode, when I'm done, you'll know exactly where citadels are and how to hit them. The cruiser that was nuked by that battleship in the last clip was an Otago, and so what I did is I went online, I found a blueprint of the Otago, and then I found all the citadel areas, the critical parts of the ship that will take massive damage in game, which is the magazines, which are generally under the turrets and a little bit left and right of them, and the boiler and engine rooms, which is the massive chunk under the funnels that's all been highlighted in red. Then what I did is I overlaid it over an in-game screenshot, and you can see exactly where the ship is most vulnerable. Now the one thing that you should probably notice right now is that the red area for the boiler and engine rooms is a humongous chunk in the middle of the ship. That means the ship is the most vulnerable if it's hit there, because it's such a big area and it's so easy to hit. So if you're a captain and you understand this, one of the things you have to know is how to protect yourself. To figure that part out, you have to go watch my episode on armor angling to figure out how to best guard this vulnerable section of your ship. On the flip side, it can also teach you where to shoot with your armor piercing in order to get the citadel hits and actually really hurt enemy ships. So, if you're in a battleship and you run up against a cruiser, don't shoot HE, shoot AP, target the engine rooms, and really, you could one-shot cruisers with no difficulty whatsoever. So let's take a look at that footage again, and this is the thing about battleships, is that the battleship guns are capable of doing so much damage with their armor piercing, assuming they hit the citadels. And it's a bit of a shame that a lot of battleship captains are still just sailing around firing HE, because I don't think they fully understand where AP is supposed to hit. So let's take a look at this in slow motion. There goes the shot. Now pay attention to where the shots land. All of them are going to land pretty much in the center of the ship where the engine room is, and not only that, but they're going to land pretty close to the waterline. So that's another thing to keep in mind. When you're trying to hit these citadels, the shot always has to be just near or just a teeny bit above the waterline. Watch that. All the shots land right there, massive amounts of damage, and that cruiser got wrecked before you even knew what was happening. So, okay, to make things really easy for everybody to remember, the general citadel locations are as follows. For the boiler and engine rooms, they're generally right under the funnel, and they are the easiest to hit compared to magazines, which generally are smaller and harder to hit, but they also tend to be a little bit weird position-wise. They're not straight down below turret. It's like going straight down, and it's either a little bit left or a little bit right to that turret. So the magazines are generally much harder to hit, so most of the times focus on trying to hit engine rooms, but also remember to try to protect your own engine room. Now I'm going to follow my own sort of guide for a second here, and I'm now going to be in my Grem, and I'm going to be firing AP, and I'm targeting the engine boiler room of this Murmansk, and just watch how quickly, through just citadel hits, I'm able to bring this cruiser down. 2 salvos in, I'd already taken off half his health. Now the Murmansk did turn, so if you watched the armor angling video, you understand why at that time I wasn't shooting, because most of the shells would have bounced. But when the Murmansk presents the side again, just watch how quickly I'm able to actually finish him off. Look at that. 3 Citadel, 7,500 damage, and a destroyer. And I'm completely wrecking this cruiser through Citadel hits alone. And by the time this cruiser has completed a turn, he's got no HP left. And with not much difficulty at all in this particular battle, I bagged myself a cruiser. So rule of thumb, works great. But there are exceptions, and I'm going to show you a couple here. So one of those frustrating cases is the Cleveland. The Cleveland is kind of an interesting ship. When you try to shoot it near the section, there, where I'm shooting right now, a lot of times nothing happens, no citadels. And, you're probably wondering why, and that's because the Cleveland has a bit of a unique layout for where its boilers are. So take a look at this picture and you'll see why. See, the rear boiler rooms, the ones under the second funnel, are actually right below it. So if you shot right under the second funnel, you would hit it. But the first funnel, the actual boiler rooms are situated a little bit further front. So if you aim sort of right underneath it, or just sort of in between the two funnels, you won't actually hit anything significant at all. Although sometimes you can hit the engine room, but it's really rare. So look what happens when I adjust my aim and I just lead a little bit further forward, and you'll see immediately how it's quite different. Now that I know where the boiler rooms are really situated, you know, the funnel truncates into a different area of the ship, I shift my aim a little bit forward and into where that boiler room is, fire one salvo, get one Citadel hit. Make a tiny little adjustment, shift it just a little bit above the waterline, next salvo, 5 Citadel hits. And so, you know, the Cleveland, which initially could be a little bit annoying and a little bit confusing as to why the Citadels aren't happening, once you know the unique aspects of the ship and you know exactly where things are, it's just as easy to kill as any other ship. Well, someone was bound to ask me this next question, which is, well, if it's so easy to kill stuff with AP, doesn't armor play a role at all? And, you know, what if it's just not raw angling? What if it's just the armor thickness? Well, here you go. This is the one example. I'm in Milwaukee Alpha, have 140mm guns, and I'm shooting into the boiler engine rooms of a St. Louis. And no matter how many shots I try, I cannot get a Citadel hit to save my life. And I'll keep trying and trying and trying and trying. I'm hitting the right place, I know that, and I'll show you afterwards. But the armor thickness on the St. Louis, which is probably the most out of any of the American cruisers up to tier 6, even the Omaha has less armor than this particular cruiser. So the Japanese 140mm guns will just not penetrate, even at really, really close ranges. I'm only at 1.8 kilometers, and nothing I do will get a penetration to go. So this is armor. This is what armor can do. So when you figure in things like angling and distance, because remember, the further away you are, the less penetration you get. So all those factors will play a role in piercing armor and getting Citadel hits. Now, the exact same St. Louis up against the Murmansk's 152mm guns, and immediately the armor gets penned. No problems whatsoever, and in something like 3 salvos in a Murmansk, I'm able to finish off the St. Louis. So while the Iwaki's 140mm guns had major problems penetrating, the Murmansk's 152mm, no problems whatsoever. So some final thoughts before I sign off for the day. If you are going to be shooting AP at stuff, do understand that armor angle, the thickness of the armor, as well as your distance to target all factor whether or not you can penetrate the armor and penetrate into that Citadel. So do keep those things in mind. If you're in a battleship, because you have such huge guns and you're shooting cruisers, just use AP. You're really going to be able to do so much more if you know where to send your shots. One other thing, remember your shots should generally be at the waterline, because that's where most of the critical stuff is hidden on a ship. And that's a wrap, everybody. Hopefully I've been able to answer some of your questions about Citadels and how to get them and where they are. If you like what I'm doing, don't forget to like and sub. If you've got any questions, please leave them in the comment section below and I'll try my best to answer them. You know, I know, I'm trying. Don't have a lot of time, but trying. Anyways, and yeah, you know, wish you the best of luck in getting out there and getting as many Citadel hits as possible and sinking tons more ships. Aside from all that, have a wonderful week, and I'll see you all on the high seas.